Everyone wears a mask, but that's not who they are. Have you ever met someone who always seemed cheerful, polite, even warm, but deep down something about them just didn't feel real? You couldn't explain it. They didn't do anything wrong, but it felt like you were speaking to a performance, not a person. That's not deception. That's a mask. And the truth is, almost everyone is wearing one. From a young age, they're taught, directly or indirectly, that certain parts of themselves are acceptable and others are not. Show strength, not weakness. Be agreeable, not difficult. Don't cry, don't speak up. Smile when they're uncomfortable. Agree when they want to scream. Over time, they learn that if they show too much of who they really are, it can cost them their reputation, their relationships, their sense of belonging. So they start to hide. But here's the thing no one talks about. The mask they wear isn't always a lie. Often, it's the best they can offer in a world that hasn't made it safe to be fully seen. This mask becomes their armor. Not because they want to deceive others, but because they're trying to protect what's left of themselves. The loud become louder to cover the silence they carry. The kind become overly kind to avoid confrontation. The strong appear invincible because they know what it's like to feel helpless. And yet, here's the paradox. The more they rely on the mask, the further they drift from authenticity. The more they rehearse a role, the harder it is to remember who they were before they played it. And worse, they start seeing everyone else through masks too. They stop looking for the human underneath. They judge fast, react hard, and expect people to fit neatly in categories they've created in their heads. But no one is neat. No one is simple. And everyone is hiding something they're not sure the world will accept. This is where real wisdom begins. Not when others tear off their masks, but when they recognize they've been wearing one. When they begin to understand that beneath the image they present to the world lies a mixture of fears, wounds, hopes, and contradictions, just like everyone else. If you look closely, you'll see it in their hesitation, in the way they pause before answering, in the way their smile flickers when the conversation cuts too close. Most people aren't being fake, they're being careful, because life has taught them that honesty is expensive. So what does this mean for how we treat them? It means don't take everything at face value. Don't assume that a confident voice equals a confident heart. Don't confuse silence for indifference or cheerfulness for joy. The mask might be impressive, but it's not the truth. And perhaps most importantly, don't rush to judge what hasn't yet been revealed. The person in front of you may be fighting a war they've never spoken aloud. Your role isn't to expose them. It's to hold space long enough for them to feel safe enough to be real. Because in a world full of people pretending to be okay, the rarest thing is someone willing to truly see. If that's the kind of wisdom you value, subscribe to Stoic Spirit. There's more truth and more clarity waiting for you here. Fear is the real script behind most reactions. If you want to read someone instantly, forget what they're saying for a moment. Look at what they're avoiding. Look at what they can't seem to hide, especially under pressure. Because here's a truth that most people never learn. People rarely act from what they want. They act from what they fear. Most conversations, behaviors, even life choices are not driven by calm, conscious intention. They're reactions, pre-programmed, emotional, and often unconscious. And at the core of these reactions, 9 times out of 10, is fear. Fear of rejection. Fear of being forgotten. Fear of losing control. Fear of not being enough. This is the script playing silently underneath their words. It doesn't speak in complete sentences. It speaks in tension, in hesitation, in the moments when their behavior doesn't match their story. And if you know how to listen for it, if you train yourself to watch the space between their words, you'll begin to see that most people aren't really trying to connect or impress. They're trying to protect themselves. Here's the part that matters. Most people aren't aware they're doing it. They think they're being reasonable, logical, or strong. But in reality, they're reacting to a memory, a wound, a moment from their past that convinced them they were unsafe. They carry it into every conversation, every decision. And the mask they wear? It's not just about looking good. It's about not being seen where it hurts. That's what makes it possible to read someone instantly and deeply. You stop listening to the surface story and instead ask the deeper question, What are they afraid will happen if they stop behaving this way? That's the key. Don't focus on what they say they value. Look at what they defend. Don't assume confidence means security. Don't mistake silence for peace. Pay attention to the patterns. Pay attention to the overreactions, the jokes that come too fast, the anger that shows up too early, the person who dominates the room but avoids real connection. These aren't accidents. They're shields. And the more extreme the behavior, the deeper the fear it's protecting. This doesn't mean you need to psychoanalyze everyone you meet. It means you approach people with a sharper eye and a steadier mind. Instead of judging what's visible, you start looking for what's hidden. And once you learn to do that, something powerful happens. You become harder to deceive, but also harder to provoke. Because when you understand that someone's hostility is just fear in disguise, when you realize their arrogance is often a cover for shame, you no longer take it personally. You begin to see the human beneath the reaction. And that, more than anything else, is what allows you to read them, not just quickly, but with clarity. Want to read people instantly? Learn to see what they're afraid of. Their words might try to distract you, but their fear always tells the truth. What they judge reveals what they're hiding. If you really want to read someone fast, don't start with their compliments. Start with their criticism. What they admire may tell you what they aspire to, but what they condemn, that often tells you what they're still at war with inside. Most people believe that judgment is about the world, but more often than not, judgment is a mirror. People don't just criticize things randomly. They tend to attack what they can't accept in others or in themselves. We all carry unresolved parts, fears, regrets, desires we've suppressed for years. And when someone else openly displays those very things, it can trigger something deep and unconscious. That discomfort turns into irritation, then into judgment. And that judgment leaks out as sarcasm, dismissal, or harsh moralizing. The key to reading people quickly is to stop treating their opinions as neutral observations and start listening to where their emotions spike. When someone reacts strongly, not just once but repeatedly, to a certain trait or behavior in others, that's not just commentary. It's personal. Someone who constantly criticizes others for being loud might have spent their life being told to stay quiet. Someone who mocks emotional vulnerability may have been punished for showing feelings. What they push away in others often reflects what they were never allowed to be. This isn't armchair psychology. It's pattern recognition. And the more you train yourself to see the emotional undercurrent behind people's judgments, the faster you'll understand what drives them. But here's where it gets nuanced. Most people don't realize they're doing this. They believe their criticism is fair, maybe even virtuous. And that's what makes it so revealing. Because when someone talks openly about what they love, they're choosing what to show you. But when they keep repeating what they hate, they're showing you what they can't suppress. Here's a simple example. Imagine someone constantly mocking people who show off their success. You might assume they're humble, but look closer. That intensity often hides something more personal, perhaps a part of them that feels left behind, or a desire they've buried under years of frustration. The target of their judgment may not be the real issue. It's the unresolved emotion underneath. Reading people on this level requires more than observation. It requires detachment. You can't take their criticism at face value or take it personally. You need the kind of inner steadiness that keeps you from getting pulled into their emotional noise. That steadiness, by the way, doesn't come from ego. It comes from discipline, from having faced your own shadows and no longer needing to project them onto others. When you develop that level of presence, you'll stop being confused by mixed signals. You'll understand that when someone condemns too loudly, they're not just speaking about the world, they're revealing themselves. So if you want to read someone instantly, don't just listen to what they praise. Pay attention to what they can't tolerate. That's where their story begins. Silence reveals more than words. When someone goes quiet, most people assume there's nothing left to say. But those who know how to truly read others understand something deeper. Silence is rarely empty. In fact, it's often louder than speech. The mistake most people make when trying to understand someone is this: they pay too much attention to what's being said and not enough attention to what's being avoided. Because the truth doesn't always come out in statements. Sometimes it shows up in hesitation, in the pause after a question, in the way a person suddenly breaks eye contact, or how they shift the topic when something gets too close to the heart. If you want to read someone instantly, start listening to their silences. Not the ones filled with calm, but the ones that arrive suddenly, the ones that make the room feel heavier. Because those silences don't happen by accident. They happen when a boundary has been touched, when someone's internal defense system is activated. People go quiet for many reasons. They might be protecting something they don't feel safe to express. They might not trust how their words will be received, or they simply haven't found the strength yet to face what's buried beneath the surface. But make no mistake, when a person avoids a topic repeatedly, that topic holds weight. It's not irrelevant. It's often exactly where the truth lives. Reading people isn't about interrogation. It's about watching what they do when the conversation hits a nerve. Do they pause? Do they dodge? Do they suddenly become vague? That's where your attention should go, not in a confrontational way, but as a signpost. Silence is the blinking light that says, this matters more than they're letting on. A useful principle. The more someone hesitates, the more the subject matters to them. You'll see this in everyday life. Ask someone a basic question about work or weather. They'll reply with ease. But ask about their father, their past failure, or their relationship, and suddenly the answers shrink. The eyes drift, the smile stiffens. That's not discomfort, that's revelation. Here's a simple example. A woman is normally talkative, animated, but when asked about her relationship with her mother, her voice drops. She shrugs it off, says, "We're fine," and quickly moves on. The surface says, "No problem." But the silence, the tone shift, the sudden retreat, those are the tells. That's what you're reading. And you don't need to push. You just need to notice. The ability to read silence requires presence. You have to be calm enough not to fill the gaps and confident enough to hold space for what's not being said. That kind of composure doesn't come from curiosity alone. It comes from inner discipline. From knowing that your role is not to force the truth, but to witness it when it surfaces on its own. Words can be rehearsed, but silence? That's raw. It's honest. And in a world that trains people to keep their pain quiet, learning to hear what isn't said is a rare and powerful skill. So next time someone dodges a question or falls quiet mid-conversation, don't rush to fill the gap. Stay present. Watch closely, because what they don't say often tells you everything. Self-deception is the first lie they tell. If you're trying to understand someone, really understand them, don't assume their words are the full story. Most people don't lie to you out of malice. They lie to protect the version of themselves they need to believe in. But here's the twist. Long before they ever deceive you, they've already deceived themselves. This isn't manipulation. It's self-preservation. Human beings are meaning makers. They need stories to make sense of pain, loss, rejection, and failure. But not all stories are honest. Some are stitched together, not from truth, but from fear. A person doesn't wake up one day and say, "I'm going to fake my way through life." What actually happens is subtler, more dangerous. They rewrite their memories, mute the parts that hurt too much, and rehearse a narrative that feels emotionally safer than reality. It's not that they're trying to fool you. They're trying not to break. If you want to read someone instantly, look at the mismatch between what they say and how they say it. Pay attention to the moments when their story sounds clean, but their tone doesn't match. When their logic makes sense, but their body tells you otherwise. These are the fault lines, cracks in the emotional surface, where truth leaks out. Self-deception doesn't always sound dramatic. In fact, it often hides behind statements that seem calm, composed, even noble. I've moved on. That doesn't bother me anymore. It made me stronger. But if you listen closely, if you really watch, you'll see the tension behind those words, the slight defensiveness, the avoidance of detail, the hollow confidence. That's the mind trying to hold a wall in place that's already crumbling inside. This is where composure matters, not just theirs, but yours. Because when someone's identity is built around a false belief, they will protect that belief at all costs. Challenge it too aggressively, and they'll retreat or attack. But stay grounded. Be calm in the moment, and you'll see more than they're ready to admit. Being able to recognize self-deception doesn't mean you confront it. It means you adjust your expectations. You stop reacting to the surface narrative and start watching the internal logic. Where does it not add up? Where do the words feel rehearsed? Where do they flinch emotionally but smile outwardly? The sooner you catch those signals, the faster you understand the truth behind the mask. This kind of clarity requires stillness, patience, the ability to let people show you their contradictions without needing to call them out. You don't need to break their story. You just need to notice the places where it's already broken. Here's a simple example. Someone tells you they're over it. They say it quickly, with a tight smile. But when the subject comes up again, they avoid eye contact, their jaw tightens, and they change the topic. They're not lying to you. They just haven't told themselves the truth yet. If you can see that gap and not judge it, you've already read them more clearly than most ever will. False superiority is a mask for hidden insecurity. One of the quickest ways to understand someone is to pay attention to how much they need to be seen as more successful, more intelligent, more in control. Because often, the louder the display of strength, the greater the fear behind it. True confidence is quiet. It doesn't demand recognition. It doesn't seek validation. It simply is. But when someone constantly asserts their superiority, when they dominate conversations, name-drop accomplishments, correct others mid-sentence, or flaunt their status, it's rarely because they're secure. It's usually because they're afraid you'll see the part of them that isn't. That's the paradox. People try hardest to impress in the very areas where they feel most inadequate. Understanding this is essential if you want to read someone instantly. Because on the surface, this kind of person can be intimidating. They seem self-assured, even dominant. But if you watch closely, you'll start to see the patterns, the way they tighten up when they're not praised, how defensive they become when someone else gets the spotlight, or how uncomfortable they are with silence, because silence doesn't give them control. Superiority is often not about pride, it's about protection. It's the armor people wear when they believe, deep down, they are not enough without it. They use dominance to shield vulnerability. And the more that dominance is repeated, the more fragile the identity behind it tends to be. When someone has to constantly remind others of their value, they're not proving it. They're trying to convince themselves it still exists. And the need to convince is your clue. It's the gap between how they present themselves and how they truly feel inside. Reading this behavior doesn't require confrontation. It requires restraint. It requires that you don't react to the performance, but observe what fuels it. When you see a person aggressively asserting themselves, ask quietly, what are they trying to protect? Because that's where their truth lives. This doesn't mean every confident person is insecure. It means real confidence leaves space. It's not afraid of disagreement. It's not threatened by silence. It doesn't need to control the room to feel worthy. But when someone fights to prove they're better, smarter, or more important, they're often protecting a version of themselves that once felt small, maybe even invisible. And in their need to never feel that way again, they build a persona strong enough to cover the wound. If you want to read them, don't look at what they show. Look at what they repeat. The insecurity is always hidden in the repetition. Here's a simple example. A team leader constantly reminds everyone of their experience and credentials. At first, it seems like leadership, but in meetings where no one challenges them, they still go out of their way to prove themselves. That's not confidence, it's fear of not being seen as competent without constant reinforcement. So next time someone tries too hard to impress, pause. Don't get pulled into the performance. Instead, ask yourself, what do they fear will happen if they stop proving themselves? When you answer that, you've already seen what's behind the mask. Exaggeration is a mask, not a mirror. One of the fastest ways to see through someone is to notice when their energy doesn't match the moment, when their words feel too big for the room, when their confidence sounds rehearsed. These are not expressions of truth. They're performances, meant not to express clarity, but to protect confusion. People exaggerate not because they're dishonest, but because they're afraid. Afraid that if they speak honestly, simply, Plainly, they'll reveal something too fragile, too uncertain, too exposed. So they go in the opposite direction. They speak louder, they use absolutes, they declare their worth instead of demonstrating it, and in doing so they reveal the very thing they were trying to hide. This is a pattern worth training yourself to catch, because while the content of what someone says can be misleading, the emotional force behind it rarely lies. When someone says, "I never get nervous," or "I always know what I'm doing," or "people are just jealous of me," with a tone that borders on desperation, you don't need to fact-check them. You need to observe the imbalance. The Stoics believed that truth is quiet, that confidence doesn't need to raise its voice, that the more in control you are of yourself, the less you need to prove it to anyone else. This idea wasn't built on detachment from emotion, it was built on the mastery of it, which is why exaggerated expressions often indicate the opposite, a lack of mastery, a need to compensate for an internal state that feels too unstable to sit with. This is why exaggeration is so useful when reading someone. It's a tell, not because the person is lying outright, but because they're trying to convince themselves. When someone repeatedly uses extreme statements about who they are, what they feel, or what they want, they're usually not describing their reality. They're rehearsing a version of it they wish were true. And you'll notice something else. Exaggeration tends to repeat. It's never just said once, it comes up again and again, because the person is using it like armor, lightweight, flashy, but ultimately fragile. And the louder they speak it, the more you should wonder what they're drowning out. Here's where the contrast becomes clear. The person who is genuinely at peace with themselves doesn't exaggerate. They don't need to. Their truth stands on its own. It doesn't require decoration or dramatics. So when you hear someone dressing up their words, pay attention not to the costume, but to the anxiety underneath it. For instance, someone in the office who keeps saying, "I don't care what anyone thinks," multiple times a week, especially when criticized or left out, probably cares a great deal. Not because they're lying intentionally, but because their ego is doing damage control. And that's where their real fear lives, not in the words they're saying, but in the part of them that's trying not to feel rejected. So if you want to read anyone instantly, study their exaggerations, not to judge them, but to understand what they're still wrestling with. The louder the message, the more likely it's covering up silence they can't yet face. What if you could see through the noise and finally understand people, not just by what they say, but by what they reveal when they're trying to hide it? In this video, we uncovered 7 powerful signs, from tension behind masks, to exaggerated confidence, to the silent clues that scream the truth. And now, you no longer have to guess. You can read anyone instantly, clearly, compassionately. If this helped shift the way you see others, and maybe even yourself, don't stop here. Subscribe to Stoic Spirit for more insights rooted in timeless wisdom and real-world clarity. And before you go, check out the next video waiting on your screen. Because once you learn to see clearly, there's no going back. Let's keep growing, quietly, steadily, powerfully.